This is shit. From Ars Technica, Senate votes to let ISPs sell your web browsing history to advertisers. By John Brodkin. The U.S. Senate today voted to eliminate broadband I don't like that. This is shit. From Ars Technica, Senate votes to let ISP sell your web browsing history to advertisers by John Brodkin. The U.S. Senate today voted to eliminate broadband privacy rules that would have required ISPs to get consumers' explicit consent before selling or sharing web browsing data and other private information with advertisers and other companies. The rules were approved on October of 2016 by the Federal Communication Commission's then Democratic leadership, but are opposed by the FCC's new Republican majority and Republicans in Congress. The Senate today used its power under the Congressional Review Act to ensure that the FCC rulemaking shall have no force or effect and to prevent the FCC from issuing similar regulations in the future. The House, also controlled by Republicans, would need to vote on the measure before the privacy rules are officially eliminated. President Trump could also preserve the privacy rules by issuing a veto. If the House and Trump agree with the Senate's actions, ISPs won't have to seek customer approval before sharing their browsing histories and other private information with advertisers. The Senate vote was 50 to 48, with lawmakers voting entirely along party lines. Quote, President Trump may be outraged by fake violations of his own privacy, sick burn, but every American should be alarmed by the very real violation of privacy that will result from the Republican rollback of broadband privacy protections, end quote, said Senator Ed Markey, Democrat of Massachusetts, after the vote. The Senate measure was introduced 2 weeks ago by Senator Jeff Flake, Republican of Arizona, and 23 Republican co-sponsors. Flake said at the time that he is trying to, quote, protect consumers from overreaching internet regulation, end quote. FCC Chairman Ajit Pai argues that consumers would be confused if there are different privacy rules for ISPs than for online companies like Google and Facebook. Quote, American consumers should not have to be lawyers or engineers to figure out if their information is protected, end quote, Pai recently told Democratic lawmakers. That's some fucking 1984 shit right there. Yeah, you have to be an engineer to know the difference between your cable company or your DSL provider and a website. You have to be an engineer to determine that, apparently, at least in the view of that particular Republican. Senator John Cornyn, Republican of Texas, argued today that the privacy rules, quote, hurt job creators and stifle economic growth, end quote. Cornyn also said the FCC's privacy rulemaking involves the, quote, government picking winners and losers, end quote, and was among the, quote, harmful rules and regulations put forward by the Obama administration at the last moment, end quote. Democrats and consumer advocates are furious. The acronym ISP now stands for Information Sold for Profit and Invading Subscriber Privacy rather than Internet Service Providers, Markey said during a floor debate today. The Senate action, quote, would allow Comcast, Verizon, Charter, AT&T, and other broadband providers to take control away from consumers and relentlessly collect and sell their sensitive information without the consent of that family, end quote, Markey said. That sensitive information includes health and financial information and information about children, he said. ISPs want to draw a map of where families shop and go to school and sell it to data brokers, quote, or anyone else who wants to make a profit off of you, end quote, Markey said. Quote, your home broadband provider can know when you wake up each day, either by knowing the time each morning that you log on to the internet to check the weather or news of the morning, or through a connected device in your home, end quote, Senator Bill Nelson, Democrat of Florida, said during Senate floor debate yesterday, quote, and that provider may know immediately if you are not feeling well, assuming you decide to peruse the internet like most of us to get a quick check on your symptoms. In fact, your broadband provider may know more about your health and your reaction to illness than you are willing to share with your doctor, end quote. Home internet providers can also, quote, build a profile about your listening and viewing habits, end quote, while mobile broadband providers, quote, know how you move about your day through information about your geolocation and internet activity through your mobile device, end quote, he said. Quote, this is a gold mine of data. The holy grail, so to speak, end quote, Nelson said. Quote, it is no wonder that broadband providers want to be able to sell this information to the highest bidder without consumers' knowledge or consent, and they want to collect and use this information without providing transparency or being held accountable, end quote. Few consumers have any choice of internet provider, said Senator Ron Wyden, Democrat of Oregon. Thus, their only choice may be between, quote, giving up their browsing history for an internet provider to sell to the highest bidder or having no internet at all, end quote, he said. That's a very realistic picture. Wyden also said that the FCC rules don't prevent ISPs from monetizing customer data. The rules simply require ISPs to inform consumers about how their data is used and get consumer consent before selling the most sensitive data, he said. Advocacy groups including Free Press, Demand Progress, and the ACLU went to Congress to deliver nearly 90,000 petitions to save broadband privacy yesterday. ISPs and advertising lobby groups had urged senators to kill the privacy rules. Cable lobby group NCTA, the Internet and Television Association, said, quote, we appreciate today's Senate action to repeal unwarranted FCC rules that deny consumers consistent privacy protection online and violate competitive neutrality, end quote. The group said that the cable industry, quote, remains committed to offering services that protect the privacy and security of the personal information of our customers, end quote. And you better believe that'll never fail, and they'll never ever use it in an improper way or upset you in any way, and they'll never accidentally neglect to say, oh, were you an opt-out? Because we still had you as an opt-in. I don't know what happened, sir. I guess the person who you talked to last time just made a mistake, but I'll correct it for you now. And you got to call them in 2 weeks just to make sure that the person who corrected it actually corrected it. Because believe me, I've worked in call centers. Things happen. People don't care. People make mistakes all the time. They're tired. They're grouchy. They're not getting paid enough. They don't really actually care about your information. The people who are going to have access to this information are going to be people who make less than $20 an hour, I assure you. I mean, just from experience working in the tech field, the modern Wild West temporary tech work field. FCC privacy rules would require ISPs to get opt-in consent from consumers before selling or sharing personal information, including geolocation data, financial and health information, children's information, social security numbers, web browsing history, app usage history, and the content of communications. Opt-out requirements would have applied to less sensitive data, such as email addresses and service tier information. The opt-in and opt-out provisions would have taken effect as early as December 4th of 2017. The rules would also force ISPs to clearly notify customers about the types of information they collect, specify how they use and share the information, and identify the types of entities they share the information with. The FCC's privacy rules also had a data security component that would have required ISPs to take reasonable steps to protect customers' information from theft and data breaches. This was supposed to take effect on March 2nd, but the FCC's Republican majority halted the rule's implementation. Another set of requirements related to data breach notifications is scheduled to take effect on June 2nd. Well, make sure you stop that, guys. I mean, my goodness, what if we had to actually inform the customers when their data was breached and they should do something on their side to protect it? I mean, that's really embarrassing for us, and we'd rather keep all of our security failures a complete secret from our customers as IT professionals. I mean, yeah, sure, I guess if you're completely unscrupulous, irresponsible, and short-sighted, you would want that to go away. But we'll see what happens. Stay tuned. June 2nd. It'll be about the year anniversary of this project I'm doing. I'm very feisty this morning. The Senate vote would prevent all of these rules from taking effect unless the House or President Trump decide otherwise. Republicans say the Federal Trade Commission should have authority over ISP privacy practices instead of the FCC. That would require further action by the FCC or Congress because ISPs and phone companies are common carriers that cannot be regulated by the Federal Trade Commission. So anyway, all that alphabet soup basically means the Federal Trade Commission and the Federal Communications Commission have different standards. The Federal Communications Commission has higher standards for information, and some of these companies are regulated by the Federal Trade Commission, others by the Federal Communications Commission. Companies like Yahoo, Google, YouTube, I'm pretty sure, are all not FCC regulated. Anything that's on the internet, anything doing like internet-based services, anything that's a website, anything that's an application, those things are not considered, basic communication services. WhatsApp is not considered a communications service as much as it's considered a commercial service. So that's what the Federal Trade Commission handles, commercial stuff. Federal Communications is handling like radio, television, cable, all these telephone. These major, utility services is where the line is. So the complaint that these ISPs have is that They have to follow different rules. The rules are more strict. That's why they don't like the difference. The difference is they want to be treated like Facebook and Google. But the difference between Facebook and Google and your internet service provider is that you can stop using Google or Facebook much more easily than you can stop using your ISP. And you can also switch between services. If I don't want to use Facebook, I can use LinkedIn or something like that for my networking or whatever, or I can just stop using Facebook, and there's literally no consequence to the rest of my activity. But I can't switch between ISPs very easily. Like right now, I happen to have two ISPs in my house because I haven't canceled one of the services. There's an ISP at work that can be used, right? So I can switch ISPs that way, but that's not really the same thing. These companies are not the same thing as web services and applications and programs that you use on your computer. Plain and simple, because any of those things can be eliminated. The ISP, if it's not given any control, can do exactly what these Democrat senators are talking about. A profile of your whereabouts that no government is capable of producing. Information about you that your lawyer may not have, or your doctor, in the case of Bill Nelson here from Florida mentioned. Your relationship with your doctor is a voluntary exchange of information. But for you to say, well, basically, now I'm just going to have to think about every single thing I do on the internet for the rest of my life. I can't use it the way I used it before, for sure. Just like kind of like maybe the Snowden revelations maybe changed your internet habits. It may have changed mine subconsciously. I'm sure it has. But you would definitely change your internet habits. You would change what you would use the internet for. You would treat the internet, ironically, more like a public broadcast medium than you would a semi-private contained service. Like, every single IP operates independently. I connect to the services that I want to connect to. I disconnect from the services I don't want to connect to. Everything is sort of me. I'm the guide of my own action. On the internet, it's a little bit different than television or radio. But once you realize that it's almost going to be turned into a reverse television or a reverse radio, where now all the internet is just Facebook, right? All the internet is, and what they would want, is just Google. In other words, it's a means or an instrument for companies to get information about me. That's what the internet is. That's what the internet's for. Because that's what Facebook's for. If you think Facebook is for talking to your friends, no, it isn't. It's for selling your behavior patterns on Facebook to advertisers. That's what it is. Now you get in exchange a service of being able to communicate with your friends. And I use Facebook very lightly. I don't put a whole bunch of stuff on Facebook because I'm not there to build Mark Zuckerberg's, thing. I don't care about that. I don't like Facebook that much. But my point about it is I can stop using it, and I can use it to the degree that I don't want to. If every ISP gets to do whatever they want with everyone's information, there's nowhere to go. And it would just change my attitude toward the information I see. I could still do things like this show, because, hey, obviously I'm putting my face on the internet, my camera's on, and I'm broadcasting it. I don't have a problem with my behavior now, but every single thing I do on the internet, I want potentially some disgruntled temporary worker making $20 an hour to have access to. Like, that doesn't seem safe. Like, that's what happened with Snowden. The whole point of Snowden is you're hiring these guys. It's capitalism. You're hiring for the least amount of money possible. These people don't give a shit. I don't know. Comment below. I'm on fire today. I have a lot more stories to do, and I don't want to lose my voice, so I'd love to hear from you on this issue. It's absolutely infuriating. I hope Trump supporters make it known that they don't want this, because that's the only way it's going to stop, is if Trump feels like this is going to create some kind of consequence for him. Because most of these things are like way above the technical expertise of most voters, which is why the Republicans control the fuck out of people and say, oh, the government's just picking winners and losers, and we're going to protect customers from overreaching internet regulation. Like, what the hell? Why would you mean consumers of what? Consumers of human beings' ideas? Because the consumers of internet access are not being protected. The ISPs financial position is being protected by this. Anyway, like to like, share to share, subscribe for more news. I'll be doing lots of stories today, and I did a lot of stories yesterday, so check them out, and talk to you soon. Bye.